Hey everyone, welcome back to White Sparrow Living, Luke 12:6. I'm Wendy and I'm so happy you're here.
Okay.
If this is your first time stopping by, welcome, and I hope you'll consider hitting that subscribe button right here down below, as well as the little bell right next to it, so that you can be notified every time I upload a brand new video. If you like these projects, don't forget to give them a thumbs up, comment, let me know what you think. And now, without further ado, let's get started.
For our first DIY, we're going to be using some silver and white ornaments, some Christmas eucalyptus, a 3D wire form, some lamb's ear from Walmart, and some buffalo check ribbon that I got from Hobby Lobby since I'm out of my Dollar Tree buffalo check ribbon. So for this project, we're just going to be using the outer rim of this 3D wreath form, and I'm going to use my wire cutters and cut that apart, and I'm going to take my ornaments and pull the tops off, and then again using my wire cutters I'm just going to squeeze the top and pull, and that'll just leave a perfect hole where that part used to be. And then I'm going to take my heat tool and or soldering gun or whatever you want to call this, and I'm just going to make a hole directly across from the opening that we just made where the ornament holder used to be. And then I'm going to feed my ornaments onto my wreath form, alternating the colors silver and white. You can do this using whatever colors you're using in your Christmas decor, but I'm just doing this one in a really light and neutral color palette. So after I get my ornaments on, I'm going to use some electrical tape to close that opening back up, and then I'm going to take a chenille stem and hot glue that to the very end where my ornaments stop, and that'll keep them tight and in place. So now I'm going to take my lamb's ear from Walmart and my Christmas eucalyptus, and I'm just going to put them on top of each other and then do the exact same thing for the other side, and I'll just put them together and grab them in the middle, making sure that the stems are behind and not showing. And then I'll just take a chenille stem and wrap that around the middle, add some paddle wire just to keep it more secure, and then I'm going to kind of curve it so that it goes around my wreath form. And then the chenille stem pieces that we use to keep the ornaments in place, I'm going to use those to attach the upper parts of my greenery to the wreath. This is probably one of the easiest wreaths I've ever done, just because there's no arranging involved. You're just clustering what's already been clustered for you in those picks. And so the big ornaments give it that beaded wreath look, but with a Christmas spin. So I've had a couple viewers ask me to do my bow tutorial a little bit more in detail, so that's what we're going to do here. So the first thing we're going to do is twist it about 3 inches above the very end of the ribbon, and then we're going to twist it and hold it between your thumb and your forefinger. Then you're going to make a loop and do the exact same thing, holding it in place with your thumb and forefinger, and you're going to keep doing that each time you make a loop. And so we're going to do this one with 4 loops, but the very first loop is actually the center of your bow. So you'll have 5 loops on one side and 4 loops on the other. And you want to make sure that you get a really good grip on this. And you can make your loops a little bit bigger each time you go, depending on the kind of look that you want for your bow. Or you can keep them the same for a more rounded bow like I'm doing here. And then I'm going to take my middle loop and fold it back over on top of itself, and then hold it again between your thumb and forefinger, and then take your chenille stem and pass it through that loop from the front and go right in between your second and third fingers so that you can kind of hold it there and keep your grip on those twists, and then pull it around and twist it really tight. And then you'll take the first and second loop at the bottom and spread those, one to the left, one to the right, go up to the next 2 and do the exact same thing. So you're alternating your loops on one side and then flip it over to the other side and do the same thing so that your loops are just all over the place. And then once you get that done, you can fluff it up, and you'll keep fluffing it up until you have it attached and actually on the wall. And then I'm going to take my extra chenille stem from the back and use that to attach it to the center of my greenery on my wreath. And then I'm going to take one of those tails, because that's all there is, and feed it through the greenery, and then I'll dovetail the end by folding it over and then cutting it at an angle. And then I'll take another piece of ribbon and make the other tail, which is not really attached, but nobody has to know that. So I'm just going to glue that down and feed it through my greenery as well, and then do the dovetailing on that end too. And here it is all finished, and I think this is so pretty. I love these colors and how muted and soft they are. The buffalo check is always one of my favorites, but the lamb's ear and the sparkly eucalyptus just makes it look so pretty and ready for Christmas. So I love how this turned out, and I hope you guys like it too. For our next Dollar Tree DIY, I'm going to be using 5 of these large felt snowflakes, and one side has glitter on them and one side doesn't. I'm going to be using the non-glittery side. And then from these Christmas ornaments, I'm taking the blingy part off. I use these snowflakes in a different DIY, so we're just going to use the silver parts. And all I'm going to do is paint my snowflakes with my Waverly chalk paint in ink, and I might have a little bit of silver showing through, which is fine because a little bit of sparkle never hurt anyone. And then I'm going to attach my felt snowflakes together at the tips, and I'll use a little bit of hot glue and then a needle and thread, and I want to make a big knot at the end because it's felt and it could go all the way through. So just to secure it a little better, I'm going to make a few stitches to attach those, and then I'm going to take my hot glue and put my black snowflakes right in those intersections, and then I'll make a couple of stitches to secure those using my black thread so that you can't see it. I ended up making mine a little bit too long for my table, but it fits perfectly on my island, so that works out too. But you can make this as long or as short as you want. Did I tell you we're making a table runner? Okay, well that's what we're making. But this is super easy, and I think it's perfect for the black and white decor. But if you're doing reds or whatever color you're using, you can just change the color of the snowflakes, or they do have the blue felt snowflakes, so that would be really pretty too. And here it is all finished, and I just have it on my island here so you can see the whole thing. And here it is on my table, and I didn't put a big centerpiece on it so you could still see it. But it's so pretty with my black and white place setting, and this would be beautiful for a Christmas buffet. And you can keep this out even through the winter months, but I love how it turned out, and I hope you guys like it too. For our next Dollar Tree DIY, we're using 4 4x6 frames and the glittery letter ornaments that spell out the word calm. And so the first thing I'm going to do is take my frames and pull out the insides, including the glass, and set that all aside. I'm not going to be using the glass, but I'm going to take my backing and I'm going to take some of the poster board from Dollar Tree and cut out squares because I'm going to fill the inside of my frames with the black paper. And then I'm going to take my frame, and I was going to leave it the neutral color that it is, but next to my other projects, it was just a little bit too beige, so I decided to just give it a light coat of my Waverly chalk paint in that nice bright white that I love so much. And then I'm going to take my letters, and I'm using some Mod Podge, and I'm going to put some on pretty generously, and then I'm going to take my faux sparkly snow and pour that all over each one of my letters. So now I'm going to take some sandpaper and give my frames a little bit of a distressing just to give it a rustic and farmhouse feel. And then I'm going to take my black paper and put that into the frame. And Kaydance was stopping by. We were having cookie night that night. So this was her cookie creation. And the kids had such a good time and everybody made really cute cookies. And so I'm just going to put the backs back into the frames. And then I'm going to take some tumbling tower blocks and paint the edges with my black paint pen. And this is going to raise my letters up from the black poster paper so that it just gives it some dimension and lifts it. And then I'll take my hot glue and glue those onto the back side of my letters and then glue my letters onto my poster board. So because I was limited in the letters that I had available, I found calm, and as soon as I found that word, I was able to figure out what I wanted to do. And these frames are flat enough that I was able to write all is and then all is bright at the bottom. And it was so funny because Michael J said my B was not fancy enough, so I changed that in the end. So now I'm going to take my black and white gingham ribbon and I'm going to start at the bottom and hot glue that around all 4 of my frames. And then I'm going to attach the C and the A and the L and the M together. But I'm going to do it at an angle so that when you set this on a countertop, it can sit up by itself without using the little kickstand. I don't know what that's called. I don't know. Kickstand, it should be called a kickstand, but anyway, I'm just going to use those as hinges, and then I'm going to leave it separated in the middle so that you can store it in the off season and you don't have to worry about it breaking apart. That'll all make sense in just a second when I show you. And then I'm only going to attach half of my bow to the center section so that it can still split apart. And here it is all finished, and I just love the black and white and how crisp it looks together and clean and still farmhouse but Christmassy at the same time. Again, if this is not your color palette, and I know it's not traditional, but you can use your own colors, your own handwriting. I love it, and I hope you like it too. For our next DIY, we're going to be using a wooden ornament, some puffy dot stickers, and I don't end up using the key tags, but I made this decal a little bit too small for an Etsy order, and so I'm going to use that in this project. I'll have the original sized version available in my Etsy shop, and I'll have that linked in the description box below. So the first thing I'm going to do is take everything off of the top of my ornament. This is going to be the back, but I am going to pull everything off, including the little metal top, which I'm going to put back on the back side. And then I'm going to take my puffy dots and stick those all the way around my ornament. Now my friend Nicole over at the Week's Nest does this to a lot of her projects, and they are so super cutie patootie. So I would sure appreciate it if you would take the time and go give her some love at her channel. It's the Week's Nest, and I'll have her channel linked in the description box below. So if you love farmhouse and boho Christmas decor, you definitely want to check out her channel. So once I get all of my puffy dots down, I'm going to take my Waverly chalk paint in white and I'll paint the entire ornament on the sides and on the back. So now I'm going to take my decal and I'm just going to cut out the manger portion, and I wanted to keep one of the little lammies, but he didn't fit, so I couldn't get him in there. And then I'm going to cut off my star so that I can apply that separately so it'll all fit onto the face of my ornament. Now, if you don't have a cutting machine, my original plan for this project was to use one of those flat reindeer ornaments that the Dollar Tree has, and they have different shapes too, so it doesn't have to necessarily just be the reindeer. That was just what I had planned. But you could place a word or a letter or whatever you can find that you could just hot glue to the front of this ornament. So then I'm going to attach my metal piece back to the top of my ornament, and then I'll take my black chalk paint and do a dry brush over the entire piece, and that's where it really makes these puffy dots stand out. Now I'm just going to hot glue a sweet little bow out of this precious polka dotted ribbon and then feed some through the top to be my ornament hanger, and I'll make a knot at the very top, and then it's done. And here it is all finished, and I love how this turned out. I can see a really big tree with a bunch of these on there. It doesn't take very long to make, and it captures the true meaning of Christmas, but I love it so much, and I hope you like it too. For our next project, we're going to be using 2 of the frosted ornaments, a glass bowl, a hat ornament, some tube lighting, and a pet bandana in the buffalo check. So I didn't realize that these ornaments already had lights in them, but when I turned it on, it was a bunch of different colors, and that would be totally fine, and you could use that for this project. But I decided to give it an all-white set of lights instead of the multicolored. So the first thing I did was use my heat tool to melt a hole at the other side of the opening, just like we did for our ornament wreath. And for the bottom one, you only need to make the hole big enough to stick that tube lighting in, but for the top one, you need to make it big enough to fit over the other opening of the bottom one. And what's really cool is that you don't even need to hot glue this together because the melted plastic will adhere it to that other ornament. So then, using a skewer and my tweezers, I fed my tube lighting through both of those ornaments, and then I'm going to glue the top part to the very top of that top ornament. And that's a lot of tops. So the next thing I'm going to do is take my foam snow and I'm going to fill up my little fish bowl, and it's going to all stack on top of each other, and then I'm going to get my hat ready. And so I'm just going to deconstruct the entire hat basically and take all of the goodies off and the fabric and the little rim that is actually just a little piece of cardboard covered in burlap. So then I took my scissors and made a hole into the styrofoam that would fit over the top part of my ornament, the top part of my top ornament. So then I'm going to take that cardboard and I'm going to use that as a template and cut out 2 pieces of black felt, and then I'm going to sandwich it in between the felt and make a hole in the center of the cardboard so that it'll fit over that opening. And then I'll just slice an X in my felt in the middle where that opening is so that it all fits snugly on top of his head. So now I'm going to cover the rest of his hat using my buffalo check pet bandana. And I'm going to do that in 2 separate pieces. And so I'll just cut out a circle a little bit larger than the top part of his hat and hot glue that down after I make some slits all the way around. And then that way it'll tuck in there nicely. And then I'll go back in with another piece, and I'm using the side that has the hem so that it'll have a nice clean finish around the top. So now I'm going to take a piece of grosgrain ribbon and attach that down towards the bottom part of the top part of his hat. And then I'll just fold that over at the end so that it gives it a clean finish as well. So now I'm going to paint on his sweet little face, and I'm just using a pencil to mark out where I want my lines to go, and then I'll use my black paint pen and draw it onto my ornament. If you ever need an idea for a face, you can just search Snowman face on Pinterest, and there's all kinds of different ideas. So I'm just going to do his two eyes, and then his carrot nose, his eyebrows, and give him a sweet smile. And then I'll just go back in and fill in those eyes and use my pumpkin chalk paint to fill in his nose. So now I'm going to give our little guy some rosy cheeks, and I'm using my Stampin' Up! Ink pad in Rose Romance. Gosh, that's hard to say. And I'm just going to take a paintbrush and dab on a little bit at a time until his cheeks are nice and rosy. So now we're going to put his hat together, and I'm just going to hot glue all around the bottom part of that base and attach it over the opening and onto his rim. And then I'm going to use the little greenery that was on the hat when we first started. And so I'll just hot glue that to the top. And then I have this little door hanger, and I'm going to use the bells that are on there. And I just cut one of the white ones off, and then I'm going to make a sweet little bow using my black and white gingham ribbon. And I'm just going to fold it over in thirds and use a chenille stem to attach it in the middle, and then dovetail the ends and place that on the brim of his hat. And then I'll place that little white bell right in the center. Now to make his scarf, I'm using the rest of my pet bandana, and I'm going to make a seam by just hot gluing it over so it's nice and finished. And then I'm going to wrap it around, and I'm using the part that came to a point on the bandana as the front part of his scarf. And then I'll just hot glue that in place. And then I'm going to glue him to the bottom part of the fishbowl, and I'm going to leave out the battery pack for the lights so that it comes out and you can turn it off and on. And then I'm going to take the rest of those bells and tie those together and then hot glue those so that they're hanging down. And then I have some little felt snowflakes from this garland, and I'll just take a couple of those and place that where the tie would be of the scarf. And then I'm going to take my white chalk paint and snowy up everything on him, and he'll be all done. Happy birthday! I don't know if you guys know what that was about. Anyway, here he is all finished, and I think he is so cutie patootie. He's showing a little bit of blue light, but it's really clear light, or the white lights, but he is adorable. I love him. Everybody's been asking for me to do some kind of snowman, so this is this year's snowman. And so I love him, and I hope you guys like him too. For our next DIY, we're going to be using 3 of these 8x10 canvases, and I had a sweet viewer, Tina Strom from Yakima, Washington, send me these crocheted squares that are really supposed to be wash rags, but I just didn't have the heart to use these and get them all messed up. So instead I'm going to be using them in this project. So the first thing I'm going to do is use my Waverly chalk paint in ink and in white, and I'm going to paint 2 of my canvases in black and 1 of them in the white. I had planned to show you guys some of the amazing perky prizes I've been receiving, and I didn't have time in this video because it's getting too long, but I can't wait to show you guys some of the other perky prizes I've gotten. So anyway, I'm just going to take a piece of cardstock and fold it in half, and then I'm going to draw a half of a tree and then cut that out. And then when you open it up, it'll be a nice symmetrical tree. And then I'm going to take that and put it onto the back side of my canvas and trace it out. And then I'll use my craft knife to cut it out of the canvas. So now I'm going to take my fabric and I'm going to hot glue that to the back of my canvas so that it'll be peeking through from the front. And if you don't have these crocheted squares, you can always use any kind of dish towel or scrapbooking paper or even fabric that matches your decor, and this would be a super cute project. So now using my white paint pen, I'm going to write on my black canvases, peace and love, and then on the white canvas, I'm going to use my black paint pen to write the word hope. And here they are, all finished, and I absolutely love how these turned out. I could have done a better job of centering my words, but here at White Sparrow Living, we love embracing our imperfections. Now, if you didn't receive a crocheted square from Tina Strom in Yakima, Washington, you could use one of your grandma's crocheted pieces or something that means a lot to you. How cute would that be? Anyway, I love how these turned out. Thank you, Tina, and I hope you guys like these too. And now for our final project, we're doing a Thrift to Treasure Dollar Tree redo. And so I got this little cabinet from my sweet friend Mary, who was cleaning out her garage, and so she gifted me with this. And so the first thing I did was cleaned it all up and then painted it with a nice coat of white spray paint. And then I'm going to use these Dollar Tree letters that are the rub-on kind, and I'm going to cut out each of the little letters, and I'm going to spell out Christ the is born. And I'll place one word in a little square, and then for King, I'm going to use my gold paint pen and just freehand that in kind of a cursive writing. So the first piece I'm going to make for our shadow box is a little baby Jesus in a manger, and I'm just using a wood bead and some scrap foam from a garden kneeler and then a little bow from a fall pumpkin. And so I'll just use my utility knife to cut out a little manger shape and then glue my bead into that little burlap piece and then fold it over and then glue him right into the bed, and then I'll put him right in the box that says born. And then I'll take one of the Dollar Tree Christmas trees and get it a little flat on the back and then put that in one of the boxes. And then from the toy section, I have some little tiny farm animals, and I'm just going to take 2 little lambs and attach those to a small piece of car chamois so that you can't see the hot glue. And then I'll take one of those teeny weeny little Christmas trees and get that all snowied up and then glue that to the fabric as well, and then hot glue that into one of the boxes. Then I took a little wooden block and I'm going to put some hot glue on it and dip it into some hay, and then I'll cut it down to make it look like a little bale of hay. And then I'll take this little horsey, which we're going to say it's a donkey, and put that right next to it. Then I took a teeny tiny house ornament and I painted it white on the bottom and black for the roof. And then I took some black cardstock and wrote "no vacancy" and attached it to a toothpick, and then I glued that on top of the house. Not on top of it, but in front of it. And then I'm going to take these old clothespins and I'm going to use this as Joseph and Mary. So I took a piece of burlap ribbon and I'm going to hot glue that to the top of Joseph's head and just kind of wrap it around, and then use a tiny piece of jute twine to wrap around his head. And then I'm going to take my Sharpie pen and draw a beard on him. And then for Mary, I'm going to put a piece of lace on her, and then using another piece of jute twine, I'll wrap that around her waist. Oh, and I also put some bangs on her too. And then I took a wooden star sticker and I'm going to hot glue that right to the top middle portion. And then I'm going to take 4 of the tumbling tower blocks and I'm going to make one a light stain and then a darker stain using my Waverly Wax in Antique. And then I'll paint one of them with black and then one of them with white, and they're going to look like books, hopefully. So I'm just painting the side and the top. And then on the spines of the books, I'm going to write 4 of the many scriptures that are in the Old Testament that foretell the coming of the Messiah. So we have Hosea 11:1, Isaiah 7:14, 2 Samuel 7:12 and 13, and then the big daddy is Genesis 3:15, which is also known as the Proto-Evangelium, which is the very first mention of God's plan for salvation. And then I'll hot glue those books together kind of crookedy and place those in one of the boxes. So now I'm going to make a drum and some drumsticks using a spool of thread and these 2 cocktail picks. And so I took all of the string off of my spool, but then it was a little bit too thin. So I rolled it back on. No, I'm just joking. It's because you guys are always saying I have the patience of Job, but that was a joke. I did that and then I had to get another one because I was not going to roll it back on. Anyway, I just took another spool of thread and then I wrapped it in some of that striped ribbon from the Dollar Tree and then painted the top, and then I added some wire so that it would look like the strings that you see on a drum. And then I'm going to place that inside one of the sections and glue it all down. And then I'm going to take 3 more of those little blocks and I'm just going to write joy on that with my paint pen and then stack those up and put it in a section. Then I glued in some white poinsettias and then took a wooden sticker that is in the shape of a present and I painted the bottom white and then added some gold to the top for the bow. And then I wrote gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And I wrote frankincense first because I didn't know if I was going to have enough room. So then I'm going to attach that to another little wooden block so that it'll stand up, and I'll glue that in. And then I took another Jenga piece and I'm going to paint that gold, and I made a little curve for a face at the top, and then I took my Sharpie pen and just made 2 little eyes and a mouth, and then I drew in a curved line for a halo, and then I took some white boa feathers and glued that to her back. And then I'm going to cut off 3 of these little mini pine cones from the pine cone garland, and they have a little bit of a hint of gold on them, so I thought these were perfect. And I'm going to place those in a section. And then I took one of the Christmas garlands and made it into a small tiny wreath, and then I'm going to add some little balls from a berry pick, and I'll glue those on and make a sweet little tiny bow for the top, and that'll be our wreath. And then I just took some additional greenery, these really pretty glittery ferns, and I'm just going to attach them with some jute twine and place them throughout the box. And then I took the top of a small ornament, and it's gold, so it worked out perfectly, and I'm going to cut the bottom off so that becomes a crown. And so here it is, all finished, and I love how this turned out. Shadow boxes are just not as popular as they used to be, but I think they're coming back into style, and I love this one. It has so much meaning and tradition, and I know the kids will love to go through each of these little areas, and you have a story for every single one of them. Maybe not the pine cones, but I'm sure we can find something to tell them about. But I absolutely love how this turned out. I hope you guys like it too. I hope you enjoyed all of these projects, and if you did, don't forget to give them a thumbs up, comment, let me know what you think. I'm working hard to get back to all of your comments, so please don't stop sending them. Also, don't forget that we have a weekly prayer post where you can post your prayers and petitions. You'll find that on my channel page under the community tab. Don't forget to check out Nicole's channel. Remember the reason for the season. I hope everyone has a blessed day, and remember to always be the light. Bye.